When my first book came out, a lot of my friends teased me and said that it should really have been called the Rhubarb Pea and Marsala Cookbook, and I am beginning to think that this series should be called the Lemon Chilli and Mint Show. But I'm not apologising for that. I mean, restaurant chefs have to dazzle us with their novelty, but at home, cooking with familiar ingredients is what it's all about. And anyway, there is another reason why this particular programme is so heavily sprinkled with mint. For me, just the smell of it instantly evokes hot-shouldered summer. It's just not a one-note herb. I mean, yes, it's pungent, but it's also so refreshing. And it's peppery, but it's sweet, and I love that combination. And I use mint, untraditionally, I admit, in my version of a gimlet, which should be vodka or gin and lime cordial. But I like fresh lime, summer sharpness, bit of sugar, and then, this is the bit I like, mint in, a few leaves. Fish it about to get all the flavour. And this is called muddling when a bartender does it, although admittedly he doesn't use a rolling pin. But I do not have any specialist tools for the job. Bit of vodka. And fizzy water, just a bit, just summer spritz. And ice. That's what I needed. I make this squid salad such a lot, and one of the things that draws me to it is the deeply green, herb-rich dressing. I've got mint and coriander there, and I'm going to add a little parsley, and to this lovely bed of deep, deep green, a lime, whole lime, and it really adds something, the whole fruit, because you get all the juiciness of the pulp as well, so not just the sharpness, but also a bit of body. Garlic clove, which I'm going to snip a bit to make the chopping easier. Little green chilli, just for a bit of heat. Some fish sauce. I love the sharpness of lime, but I adore the saltiness of fish sauce. And a sprinkle, about a teaspoon of sugar, just to counter the saltiness and sharpness of the dressing so far. Also, I think it brings out the flavour of the herbs. My mother always put sugar in mint sauce, so it reminds me of that. On to Blitz. And then some groundnut or any vegetable oil. Groundnut oil becomes a wonderful carrier for the herbs, the garlic, the lime in the dressing. Perfect. Oh, it is so deeply, intensely green. It's like liquid snooker bays. Look at this. Well, that's the dressing. Now the squid. Baby squid, really tender. Which I've cut into rings, and I'm going to quick fry until the rings turn sort of pale pink. Really, it just needs a couple of minutes. I love how the white of the squid takes on the palest of pinks, and those crowns of tentacles curling up so deeply pinkly. And that looks about it. I'm gonna decant into a bowl. Sprinkle some salt over these. I'm just gonna put the squid there just to cool a bit while I get on with the salad, which is nothing more laborious than arranging a few salad leaves. I mean, there's rocket here, but you could use a packet of designer leaves from the supermarket. And on to these lovely bits of straggly green, I'm going to add some red onion that's cut into thin, red-tipped half moons. and strew on top. And now, just want to work some of the fabulous green dressing through my pink and white squid. The thing about squid when it's this tender is that it's fabulous and melting in texture, but it tends not to be very pronounced in taste, and so it absorbs this pungent, herby background perfectly. Now, just adorn the top of your beautiful salad with these. Look at these pink crowns of tentacles. I think I'm just going to spoon just a little bit of the dressing over the leaves. I love this so much. And that is it. I'm going to have some now. Lovely. Some food combinations are so perfect that you can't imagine anyone ever needing to invent them. I mean, think of tomatoes and basil, or lamb with rosemary. And for me, there is mint with sheep or goat's cheese. There's just something about the peppery coolness of mint against the salty tang of halloumi or feta, or sharp and creamy chèvre that just makes me drool. These flavours work so well in this simple summer salad with halloumi. First, in an oilless pan, fry slices of halloumi until slightly scorched and golden. Then make up a simple oil and lemon dressing and sprinkle in some chopped mint. Finally, drizzle the mint speckle dressing over some crunchy salad leaves, topped with the halloumi slices. This Corsican omelette combines soft goat's cheese and fresh mint. Lightly fry some chopped mint in butter before pouring in some beaten eggs. Crumble in the creamy chèvre. The salty sharpness of the cheese again contrasts wonderfully with the fresh hit of the mint. Sprinkle with a final topping of mint and dive in. There is just something about the marriage of sharp cheese and fresh mint that really works. And here they're the baseline for my courgette fritters. And I know the word fritters really conjures up this complex world of deep frying and dense eating, but these are really light vegetable patties that are crispy and juicy at the same time. I mean, perfect. There are just 4 courgettes providing this amount of grated matter. I want to get as much liquid out of these courgettes as possible, which is why I'm strewing them over this jauntily nautical tea towel. Swaddle these little babies and bung them out of the way while I get some other ingredients out of the fridge. Eggs, spring onions, feta, my salty sharp cheese of choice here. Okay, so finely chop the spring onions, bunch of them, 4, 5, that sort of thing. Put them in here. And these are wonderfully herby little patties, and my herbs of choice today: mint and parsley. Oh, again finely chopped. Lovely summer garden here. Yeah, the funny thing is people are so kind of foolishly and smugly snobbish about dried herbs. But dried herbs can be wonderful, and interestingly they provide something very different from their fresh counterpart. For example, fresh mint, I think, brings coolness, whereas dried mint brings warmth. And I want that here. So a sprinkle of dried mint to compound the heavenliness of the fresh mint. Want some paprika Not just because I love its sweet heat, but also because I want the reddish gold tinge it brings to these lovely green and white crispy cakes. Oh, look at that. About 140 grams, 150, anyway, a cupful of plain flour, 3 eggs, wonderful hit of sunshine here. So into this golden batter, dense, salty, crumbly feta. And finally these beautiful dark tipped jade strands of courgette. Everything's juicily combined with these lovely strands hanging out. Just need to put the pan on the heat, some olive oil in it, and dollop them in and fry them. Real home cooking so often starts with leftovers, and for me the ultimate leftover is cold chicken. I mean, my mother took this to ridiculous extremes, which I have a great sympathy with, which is to say whenever we had chicken for lunch she'd roast 2 chickens, one for us to eat hot and another just to be put in the fridge cold for picking at. And I was looking through my maternal grandmother's recipe folder the other day, and I came across her recipe for coronation chicken, which I remember very, very fondly. And she always put mango chutney in hers. And although I wanted to rework it entirely and have, I wanted to keep the idea of the mango, but I've used instead fresh mango, which works incredibly well. But of course, given the year of its birth, I couldn't anymore call it coronation chicken, but instead, please forgive me, golden jubilee chicken. Need to start off with some chopped mango, and this is the way I think it's easiest to cube a mango. Okay, so just cut round, not deeply, just to get through the skin, and then flay the mango, which is to say just pull the skin off. It's no bad thing if you get the slightly underripe mango, which is just as well because that's how they're sold mostly. Peel off, cut down, and then across, and I'm sure this is incredibly dangerous, but I like living dangerously. I just cut against the stone so the cubes fall out. And then it's exactly the same for the other side. Now I love the sweetness of the mango. There's something very old-fashioned about having the sweet fruit with chicken, but with it I want heat, I want to temper it slightly. So a lovely juicy red chilli. It's going to be easier with this actually. Clumsily de-seeded and finely chopped. Now to spruce up the savouriness a bit more, a spring onion. Just finely sliced. Oh, lovely red and green together. And add these to the mango cubes. Now, some lime juice, very important, because although I love the sweetness and the hotness, sourness brings everything to life. The squeeze in. Starting off as one, you can always add another lime at the end when everything's assembled. So this really is the basis of the salad and its dressing. And then, final little bit of chopping. This cooked chicken breast. I like it in chunks here. I love the tender whiteness of the flesh against all that seared outside. And some lettuce, whatever you like. I like the little gem here. I know you're never meant to cut lettuce, but I want this really finely shredded, so it's almost like a herb rather than a leaf. and for wonderful pungency and earthiness, because I think the lovely thing about the blandness of chicken, if you like, is that it really can carry other flavours. Some coriander. And all this really zings. So, just tumble this into this. Mix well. Fabulous sort of 50s day glow colours. Now, a little oil. When I say a little, I mean little. About a teaspoon. This is groundnut oil, flavourless and light. Teeny bit, drop or two of sesame oil. Sprinkling of salt. Mix everything together. This is lovely, sprightly summer salad whenever you eat it. And just a can onto a plate. Look at this tumbling out. Lovely. And a bit more coriander, I think. Perfect summer salad whenever you eat it. Another fabulous low-effort chicken salad is this one with parsley and almonds. Throw some roughly shredded chicken into a tangle of unchopped flat leaf parsley and toss together. Toast some flaked almonds and scatter over the salad, along with a generous sprinkle of Maldon salt. And that's it. Your work is done. Just eat. My Caesar Cleopatra is a twist on a classic Caesar salad. Make the dressing simply by whisking lemon juice, oil and grated parmesan into an egg yolk and pour oozily over some cos lettuce. Toss with chunks of cold chicken and avocado and give a final grating of parmesan. I've always associated that American cocktail, a mint julep, with the deepest heat of midsummer. I suppose that's because at a formative age I read The Great Gatsby, and in it there is this pivotal scene when they're all sitting around deranged in the airless heat, drinking mint juleps before, everything happens. And I've used the ingredients of a mint julep, to mint and bourbon whiskey, to form a syrup for poaching peaches in, which is fabulous for giving deep southern heat to unseasonable fruit. I'm just going to turn this gorgeously aromatic syrup down to simmer, and then the peaches that are to be poached in that syrup can be cut. I wouldn't normally advise cooking fruit because fresh fruit is fabulous, but it's not very often, even in the height of summer, that you can get a peach you can really sink your teeth into. And there's something about poaching peaches that just seems to restore to even resistant and firm flesh all the lusciousness which is due to the peachy estate. If the peaches are at all unripe, and odds on they will be, then it's much easier to remove the stones after they've poached for a while in the pan than it is to do it now. The reason I choose white-fleshed rather than yellow-fleshed peaches is straightforward. They're more beautiful. I mean, look, this lovely pale flesh and that rosy blush around the rim. And the lovely thing is, when the peaches have been poached and you just slip off the skins, all that beautiful pink-red glow will have transferred onto the pale flesh. They're like fairy tale peaches. So cut side down, in they go. So the peaches are in. Now there's a reason why I use bourbon. Well, obviously it's because it's the key ingredient in a mint julep. But also, I just love the rounded spiciness of bourbon, which Scotch doesn't quite have. But if you've only got Scotch in the house, that's fine. Not red wine, simply because that would stain them and dye them. You'd lose all that beautiful paleness. I love the way the peaches seem to ooze their pinkness into the syrup, and then the syrup oozes back its bourbon spiciness, and it works perfectly. You don't need to make this up from scratch every time. You can let this cool after you've used it and then freeze it, and then next time you want to make these, you've already got your syrup there. But I have to say, a really fabulous way of using this up is to boil it down so you have an intensely peachy bourbon syrup, and then pour it hot over cold, cold vanilla ice cream. I'm going to turn these over now, and you'll see why I cook them cut side down first, because now they're cut side up, which means when I want to test them to see whether they're ready, which I do in a very primitive fashion by spearing with a fork, it means at least I'm not going to mar their blushing, humpbacked beauty. When they're cooked, they should feel tender but not flabby, and it's hard to be precise to say exactly how long this will take. When they're on the cusp of ripeness, maybe a minute or so each side should do it, but when they're really firm and underripe, you could go as far as 4 minutes a side. So, just take these lovely little babies out. Like fairy tale peaches. What I love about poaching peaches like this is that you get that hit of intensely fruity midsummer whenever you want, because you can buy peaches really all the year round. And since this takes all the winteriness out of them, it's fabulous. Summer restored. So let these cool a bit before I start manhandling them. And what I want in the syrup is for it to be even more intense. So this means hiving off some, like 200 millilitres, into another pan. Add a splosh more bourbon, and then let this bubble away, getting deeper in taste and colour and thicker. And then when this is cooled, you can pour it over the beautiful skinned peaches, dot with roughly torn up mint, and just eat and taste the whole of summer. I can't go in for any sort of cooking that's trying too hard, which rules out fusion food right off. But I have nothing against pleasurable eclecticism. Naturally, you want to plunder from all over, and I see no reason to apologise for that. In fact, I have only one rule in the kitchen, which is, if it tastes good, eat it. This salad, prawns and black rice in a sort of Vietnamese dressing, didn't start off life this way, by which I mean I had them left over in the fridge and just put them together and they worked. This fabulous black rice had gone with a fish curry. I'd had the Vietnamese dipping sauce, which I'm using here as a dressing, to go with some roast chicken stuffed with lemongrass. Did have a fresh consignment of prawns, and it just shows that in life and in the kitchen, the really best things that happen to you are not as a result of planning. I'm going to get the prawns in. I want to poach them, which means they'll keep lovely and tender. Just pour over some water from a recently boiled kettle. Some lemon. Just a rather clumsily spritzed juice of half a one. And salt, thereby reproducing the briny marine environment from which they come. Put them on to poach, and while these are cooking, I'm going to get on with the sauce, which is incredibly easy. So a couple of cloves of garlic, minced, mince them whatever way you want, I just find this easiest. Ginger, about this amount, I don't know, a spoonful or so once you've got this golden pulp, and this is definitely the best way of getting that. A a chilli. You can either use a fat juicy one like this or a couple of those lethally fierce bird's eye chilies. I mean, however much heat you want, you go for. Chop finely. You want to see all these lovely red confetti shards of chilli flecking the black rice. And it is really black rice. It's not white rice dyed with squid ink, and it's not wild rice, although frankly you could use either if you prefer. Okay, in with the chilies. Now, on top of that heat, some fish sauce, about 4 tablespoons, 60 mils. Wonderful sort of deep and throatily saline. After saltiness, sourness, always important. About 2 spoonfuls of lime juice, I'd say that's about 1 lime. Right, so I want heat, and I want sour, and I want salty, and I need a bit of sweet as well, so a couple of spoons of sugar and some water, about the same amount as the fish sauce, that's to say about 4 spoonfuls. The sugar dissolves quite easily in this acid liquid. And now what I hope is a seamlessly engineered time and motion study. The prawns should be ready, and they are just perfect. I love how these grey mottled prawns turn into these fat coral curls. Look at them, nice and fat. Perfect. Now you just need to stir everything together. One thing I would say, always use a fork when you stir rice. Don't use a spoon or it'll just go claggy and squidgy. A bit of stickiness is divine, but you don't want everything to clump together. Okay, so that's the rice. Now spoon over some of the dipping sauce, and can you see how the red of the chilli and the golden of the ginger just stud it? Some prawns. It's really up to you whether you make this a prawn salad that's banked about with a bit of rice, or a rice salad dotted with prawns. I'm easy on this. And top with a bit of the sauce. And you know, just goes to show that the best sort of cooking is the cooking you just do by rummaging about in your fridge, playing with what you've got. I also love this rice hot, topped with tender squid rings and a generous drizzle of that fabulous red-flecked Vietnamese dressing. The nubbly black rice goes dreamily with the bouncy sweetness of the calamari. Despite being a complete carnivore, I often go in for a veggie version. So let the rice cool and replace those plump pink prawns with chunks of creamy jade avocado, and again pour over some of the Vietnamese dressing. This is a perfect sofa-slumped weekday supper. My pasta with mussels is a bit of a hybrid, really. I mean, it's mostly Italian in that it is a shiny black-shelled version of linguine with clams. But then again, it's a bit French in that it has a reminder of moule marinière and finally reaches Spainwards for a slug of sherry. But for me, the whole point about cooking with mussels and why I love it is that you feel you have the sea right in the kitchen. The mussels take such a short time to cook. I'm just going to whack in the pasta now. My favourite linguine, which are like dense flattened spaghetti shapes. Perfect here. I use half as much pasta as mussels, so for this 250 grams, I've got 500 grams of mussels there. Now I'm going to give the pasta a good 2 minutes under what it says in the packet. Linguine should be cooked for 11 minutes. But what I want to do is drain this when it's partially cooked and then cook it for another couple of minutes in the mussels and all their briny juices, and everything comes together. The pasta absorbs their liquid. That's also the sauce. I like to use a juicy red fat chilli for this, and I de-seed because although I want heat, I don't want mind-blowing fire. And I cut this, however clumsily, into thin, straggly strips. Garlic, just one clove. Look at this beautiful rose garlic, heavenly. You cannot have mussels without garlic. And I like this cut into shards too, little spikes, just cut lengthways, and then down them. Bit of olive oil in this new pan for the mussels and all their lovely garlicky chili bits. Ordinary, not extra virgin. And I always cook garlic in cold oil and then heat it up. Otherwise, the garlic sizzles straight away, turns brown, turns bitter. You don't want that. So, in they go. Okay, so heat on. This won't take very long. Just want to let these strips soften in the warm heat before adding some sherry. And I love sherry here. I mean, wine is more normal maybe, but the thing about sherry is that it's fortified and that makes everything more robust, and I want this to be gutsy, simple but gutsy. All I want to do now is drain the liquid off these and tip them clatteringly into the pan. Pour in the sherry, and I use Amontillado, but as long as it's good sherry, use any that you like. Clamp on the lid and let the mussel steam. Swill. This is partly just to disperse the heat and partly because I love the sound. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to drain the pasta and then let it sit in the briny, winey juices. Final stage, very necessary. Gonna chop some parsley. This is crucial. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there is a holy trinity of garlic, wine, and parsley in the life of a moule. Okay. Final clattering swill, and there. Now I find that half a packet, 250 grams of pasta, is enough to feed 2 people generously for a main course, and to be frank, how else would you want to feed them? More parsley. Summer by the sea. Un cappuccino per favore, grazie. I have always been a raving Italophile. I love everything about Italy. It's not an original passion, I know, but it is a heartfelt one. And someone, and now I come to think of it, probably an Italian, once said that the difference between French cooking and Italian cooking is that while French cooking draws attention to the cook, Italian cooking draws attention to the food, and I really think there is something in that. I I love the way Italians make food look so beautiful. Not because they're doing anything tricksy or elaborate, but just because they've got the touch. I mean, look at those. That's just tomatoes and basil on toasted bread, and yet you just want to eat it straight away. And all of this, I think this looks ravishing. When I go to Italy and I come back and I've got my photographs and I take them to be developed, and I find when I get them back, all they are is food markets, greengrocers. I mean, maybe one or two of my children, but mostly just food, and you can see why. Italians are very enthusiastic, as well they might be, about trifle, which in their creamily gloopy rendition is called zuppa inglese, English soup. Now, I've done an Anglo-Italian version which goes back and forth from both countries for ingredients. Now, it's very much a trifle, but it has a sort of mascarpone-rich reminder of tiramisu. The base of my Anglo-Italian trifle is just good shop-bought trifle sponges wodged together with blackcurrant jam to make little sandwiches. I've used a whole packet, that's 8 sponges, but it's so difficult to say with trifle because it isn't really about quantity, it's about layering, and this is what fits into the base of this bowl. That's the Brit base. On top, an Italianate sprinkling of, look, these amaretti biscuits, which I've just processed to a rubble, not too fine and sandy, to sprinkle over. Wonderful, very almondy. Now, on top of the biscuits and the sponges, another Italian note, this time sounded by some lemon liqueur. I mean, only because whenever I go on holiday, I come back with some odd drink or other, and this one is delicious. But if you haven't got any and don't want to buy some, then use rum or whatever you want. Rum's very good in this. Okay, 150 millilitres, which is, I suppose, a good glassful. I mean, I don't think even I would drink this much, but still. Just pour over. Turning everything to citrusy sludge. And now, the only bit of cooking this trifle involves, I mean, normally you have to make a custard, I've spared you that, is just heating up some jam, not even cooking, and a bit of a squeeze of lemon, just because I think when you have sugary stuff, you need sharp taste just to counter it. And then, once this has melted slightly, it's just a question of tumbling in. Look at these luscious black fruits. 750 grams I've got here, but it doesn't really matter. Just heat the blackberries just until the juices start running out. I don't want to turn these to mush. I just want them to be more of a glossy compote than single clumpy fruits. I love blackberries, I have to say. Just blackberries sprinkled with a teeny bit of vanilla sugar and a huge swathe of double cream. I mean, I could have that for supper throughout the summer. So beautiful how these berries turn to glossy jet. Look at them winking at us. And the way they peek out under their blanket of white mascarpone later. Now on top, a layer of, I don't know how to describe it, it's almost like cheesecake mousse. Mascarpone whipped with some egg and 100 grams of caster sugar. Just pour half of that, or thereabouts, into the yolks and put them aside for 1 minute. The whites in here. Okay, this is not going to be at all interesting, but it has to be done. Now, I want to sprinkle in a bit of sugar into these frothy whites. They're nearly stiff enough. I don't want them really dry, just firm and frothed to give a bit of lightness to the mascarpone. Okay, so we're on to stage 2 with our eggs. So the 2 egg yolks with the sugar just need whisking until they're yellow and frothy. Doesn't take long. And then a good slurp, about 3 spoonfuls of limoncello into that. Okay, so a lot of mascarpone, I know, about 750 grams here. Beautiful, luscious and creamy. Just fold it in. Good sounds. And now, the egg whites. Don't be scared of egg whites. Don't think that you have to be so gentle or everything will go wrong. It won't. In fact, I'm going to do a bit of very, very brisk beating. Now, I like to have a teeny bit more of the lemon liqueur in just to bring everything together at the end. I mean, the thing about putting drink in is it's up to you how strong you want it. I think it's the lemonness of the liqueur which helps make this redolent of cheesecake, which is never a bad thing. Okay, now just blanket over. Actually, it's more like a duvet, isn't it? See, this makes everything so simple. The point about trifle is it's the ideal pudding to make when you've got a lot of people pitching up, because you just wouldn't make this for a small group because it isn't worth doing in a teeny weeny bowl. Now, what I'm going to do tomorrow is sprinkle with the remaining bit of amaretti rubble and a few toasted flaked almonds. This just has to go into the fridge till then. For an easy but ludicrously gratifying main course to go before my Anglo-Italian trifle, I love to barbecue a big fat Dan Dare steak. But first, in the spirit of tasty eclecticism, I dunk it in a Korean marinade, savoury and tenderising, soy, fish sauce, ginger and spring onion, and a pinch of sugar. Black and blue is the New York restaurateur's term for the way I love my steak cooked. That's to say, seared, really charred on the outside and quiveringly rare within. Now, if you want your steak black and pink or black and dark brown, please be my guest. But I love this, and I love the way the barbecue really burns meat, so you get a deep, salty, flavoursome crust. Now, I think this looks ready to turn now. Ah, fabulous and black. I kind of carry on the theme of Korean barbecue by cutting this very, very thinly, so you end up with a tangle of spice-seared ruby flesh rags, which I have a hostess trolley come barbecue here. I warm up these things, which are a cross between Chinese pancakes and flatbreads, pile up with meat, and then some cucumber and spring onion, and roll up and just munch. Or we can go back more Brit style, if we dare. Nice bun with, see, we have got a contribution to make, brown sauce. And in fact, if you've got any of that dipping sauce that went with the prawns and black rice, that's fabulous with this too. So you can really eat it as you want. That looks ready now. I shall start carving. I can feel the cave woman swelling up inside me. Oh yeah, funnel. If I had to start making a pudding at this stage in the proceedings, I really would lose it. But the good thing about the trifle is, well, there's nothing much to do now. I've done everything yesterday. All I want to do now is toast some flaked almonds, by which I mean fry them in an oilless pan until they go brown and golden. But you don't even have to bother with this if you don't want to. You can use just the rubble of mushed up amaretti biscuits left over from yesterday. But I like the mixture of Anglo almond and Italian almond. But this is the pièce de résistance. Hello, darling. Look. Beautiful trifle. That day in the fridge really lets it all get lusciously firm and everything melds together. Just want to dive in at this stage. Perfect. Needs nothing more than its final sprinkling. But what I love about this trifle is the wonderful contrast between all that spongy goldenness and then the deep red from the blackberries oozing out and down against the mascarpone and eggs. Now these should be ready now, lovely and golden. I love this final sprinkling. It's not just the goldenness, which I think is necessary, but that touch of crunch and the contrast with the mascarpone cream underneath. Beautiful. Right, on my tray, and triumphantly gardenwards. Ready? As far as I'm concerned, summer food doesn't have to be eaten in summer, but at whatever time of year, it needs to summon up that brightness, intensity and openness, and everything can be tweaked to suit the mood of the moment. Watermelon mint and feta salad is what I make to create that instant hit of summer, and a wintry borscht can be chilled down and spiced up to make a gloriously cool Barbara Cartland pink soup. Don't worry, Matron is going to be very gentle with you. Now, I need these gloves actually to peel the beetroots for my spice pink soup, because otherwise I will have more than a touch of the Lady Macbeths about me. I've roasted them for a couple of hours in the foil, which really brings out their flavour, but they still leak their wonderful sweet blood, which is why I am protected. Beetroot's one of those odd things, a real kind of love or loathe sort of food, but I think most people just hate beetroot because of the memory of school beetroot, which is sort of flabby and disgusting. But the funny thing about roasting beetroot is that you don't have any of that flabby texture. It really brings out that wonderful sweet earthiness of the vegetable, and somehow the texture stays strong and pure. Ah, look how they glow at these wonderful sort of ruby lights. I know these are very darkly glowering now, but when you blitz them with some sour cream just before you eat the soup, it does go shockingly pink. Right, now I think I might have to remove one of these rather delicious gloves for this part of the operation. And go straight into the blender. Right, bit of lime juice. The beetroot is very sweet, I mean fabulously sweet, but I think you need to offset everything when you cook. And against the sweetness of the beetroot, I want that intense sourness of lime juice. This is a spiced pink soup, and the spices I want here are those very strong, almost pungent, earthy ones. So I've got ground cumin, really pungent, and ground coriander. Nothing mimsy here. Right, I need some stock. The kettle should be hot. 1.5 litres for about that amount. the beetroot, and some stock concentrate. Just add a teeny bit now just to help this off. I don't want to add it all at once or I will be pink from head to toe. There goes. Oh. Pour the stock through the funnel. Isn't that wonderful? I'm just going to pour it straight back in at this stage because I like to puree it again before eating it. And I know it looks really alarmingly magenta now, but once it's cooled and has been stirred through with some sour cream, it just goes the purest puce. One last thing before it gets cold. Let's get a couple of spring onions, just slice them lengthways, stick them in the soup to infuse it with their flavour. And then when this is cold, just fish out spring onions and add the further kind of harmonious souring with some sour cream counter all that spice sweetness. And blitz this soup one final time again before serving so that it's super smooth and silky. As improbable as it sounds, this combination of watermelon and feta does work incredibly well, somehow both savoury and refreshing at the same time. Obviously the watermelon and the feta are the chief ingredients, but before you start with them, you need to slice a red onion, cut it into really fine half moons and steep it in the juice of about 2 limes. And you will see, look how incredibly beautiful, I mean luminescently pink, really lit up. And it's not just the beauty, although that's no small consideration, but also it takes out all that kind of acrid burn you can get from raw onion, so you can eat this and your friends will like you afterwards. Okay, a little light chopping. It's nice to chop things fairly roughly for this salad. This piece weighs about 1.5 kilos. I'm just going to cut it away from its skin. And I want quite large chunks, but small enough to get into your mouth at one time, but then my mouth can't accommodate. Roughly triangular shapes if you can, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. And then you really can just mix everything up as it comes into the bowl you're going to eat the salad out of. Ah, so beautiful. And against this lovely juicy pink graininess, some incredibly salty, dense feta. I mean, the contrast works on every level. I can't take that much credit for this combination because it really is the Middle Eastern variant of a Greek salad. And it makes sense because when it's very hot, what you need is food that is sweet, salty, and full of liquid. We'll just tumble this on top. Ah, fabulous. And then some black olives, pitted, about 100 grams here. Beautiful. And now my glowingly puce red onions. I know it looks like there is much too much onion there, but you must remember that the lime juice makes the onion so mild and sweet. It doesn't taste like that. And you need the juice. Can you see how pink it's gone because of the onions? And you do need the lime juice. It's part of the dressing for the salad. Bit of oil. Not much. This is a lovely, lovely, light, refreshing salad. And all that remains, some really roughly torn off parsley. I like this to be eaten really like a salad leaf, not as a sort of herby garnish. And some roughly chopped mint. And just toss all this together and it is just easier to use your hands. Feels rather lovely. Well, I'm done and just desperate to dive in. Please try this. It's so incredible. If you're as much of a rhubarb addict as I am, you will be weepingly grateful for this fool. It's an old-fashioned English summer and pudding form, vanilla-scented, rhubarb rippled and totally dreamy. You need 500 mils of cream whipped. You want it lusciously thick but not stiff. And this here started life off as a kilo of rhubarb, which I cut into logs and just put in a baking tray with 300 grams of vanilla sugar, covered with foil and then roasted for about an hour. And I just strained it and forked it into a puree. Just gently fold in. You don't need to do much of this because the whole point is to have the smoothness of the cream rippled with the tart fruit. You don't want this one pink homogeneous mousse. And this is the thing which I think makes all the difference. The juices that the rhubarb made when it roasted, I reduced. Just going to pour some of this cooled pink goo in. Tastes like boiled sweets. And again, fold gently. Bit more rippling. And then little gentle filling of glasses. I love how it's feathered with the pink. We're back in the Eastern Mediterranean, give or take, for the bulgur wheat salad with lamb. And this is the bulgur wheat. It's cracked wheat, wonderful golden sort of crunchy shards of it. Has real bite, a sort of nutty flavour. And like all starches, it's very good at carrying other flavours, really strong flavours. And even better, you don't have to cook it, it just soaks. You should look at the packet instructions of the bulgur wheat you buy because it can be fine or it can be coarse. But this one needs about 15 minutes in hot water, just covered with a plate. And by the time the bulgur wheat has absorbed the water, the lamb should be absolutely ready and probably have stood for a few minutes too, because these are tender little loins. Just turn them over. Now I am going to get started on everything that's going to go in with the bulgur wheat. And I know this is an absurdly large bowl, but when you want to toss everything together, you need a bit of space to move around in. Now first, I have to have a bit of chilli because I want heat. Again, it's the sweetness of the meat. And on top of the heat of the chilli, lots of onion, but I want that lighter, fresher burn of spring onions. And a huge amount of herbs, mint and coriander, because the salad really can take that depth of pungency. Because you need contrast of texture as well as contrast of flavour, some courgette just to be cut up raw for chunky crunch. So I've done chopping, and the lamb, lovely and bouncy still, is ready. And this can stand just for a few minutes while the salad gets its final bit of tweaking. Now, I think the bulgur wheat looks like it's absorbed all the water, but just because I don't want this mushy, I'm going to do a little high-tech water removal. Strain the bulgur wheat just to let any excess liquid drip out. Then toss the bulgur wheat in. A few more herbs. And now, I love this, just mixed together so that the golden grains become flecked with aromatic green. And the smell of the mint and coriander as you toss the wheat against it is just amazing. I want a really feisty dressing to go with this strongly flavoured salad, so I'm going to use 4 limes, and that's just for starters. Taste and it may need more. This sounds like a lot and as if the dressing is going to be really too acid and sharp, but in fact the bulgur wheat is very sweet. Well, all carbohydrate is sweet, and so what we're getting is balance, not invasive sourness. Now a small amount of olive oil and a good crunchy scattering of salt. We use forks now just so it doesn't all start clagging up. And you know, it's because of these strong flavours in the salad that the lamb is as it is. No marinade, nothing. Just sweet and meaty and pink. The last bit, but the hardest if you're clumsy, assembly stage. You can have the salad on one plate and just carve the lamb and slice it on another one, but I love them together. The green flecked grain and the pink slices. I want to be eating this at some sun-dappled portside restaurant in the Levant. Somehow it's impossible to be English without being afflicted by the most terrible strawberry nostalgia. We all cling on to this belief that there was a time when life was good and strawberries really tasted of strawberries, sweet and red and juicy, and holding the whole of summer in their buried centre. Yeah, but we all know it's not always like that. I mean, sure, when fruit's as luscious as this, you want to eat them as they are, just untouched. But for the rest of the time, they need a bit of help. I love to use a reader's tip that I picked up from a newspaper to make strawberries fragrant with rosewater. Hull and halve a couple of punnets of strawberries and sprinkle over a spoonful each of caster sugar and rosewater. Cover with cling film and leave to steep for an hour or so at room temperature before eating as they are or over ice cream. Wimbledon meets the Arabian Nights. Heavenly. And I adore this classic Italian way of bringing out the natural sweetness of strawberries. Chop them roughly, sprinkle with sugar and macerate in a few drops of best quality balsamic vinegar. Once flavoursomely soused, spoon them on top of cream-dolloped, good shop-bought meringues. One messy bite and you're lost. For me, strawberries are the taste of lyrical, wide-skied summer, and this drink is the essence of that. Blend strawberries with sugar to taste to a puree and top up with a bottle of Prosecco or other fizzy white wine. For me, a strawberry fragonard is the spirit of summer. There is just something about homemade strawberry ice cream. It's the taste of blue skies and of sun on your shoulders, the childhood we all wish we had. I've got 500 grams of strawberries here, just roughly chopped with a couple of spoonfuls of sugar sprinkled over. And I want to blitz these now. So not completely liquid, but nubbly and red and mushed up. I'm just going to leave these here to let their strawberryness intensify while I get on with the ice cream base. In that pan, I've got half a litre each of milk and cream, warmly infusing with a vanilla pod, which I'm now going to remove. I'm done with it. And in here, I've got 10 egg yolks, which I know sounds like a lot, but I am making a huge batch of ice cream. On top of the egg yolks goes 175 grams of caster sugar. Whisk the sugar into the yolks. Whisk this in. And then back into the pattern. Don't be alarmed of making ice cream at home. It is no big deal. It's just a question of reheating this, gently stirring just for about 5 minutes or so until it thickens slightly. And that's just how I want it now. Can you see? Not that thick, slightly thickened. A beautiful pale primrose. And while this is cooling down, I'm going to entertain myself with a little light clearing up. Perfect, cold, and now, I love this bit. One primrose, one red, shortly to be one united pink. Just fold the strawberries in. And there is one final thing, and it makes such a difference. The juice of half a lemon. I can't tell you what this does. All the flavours spring into action. It makes all the difference in the world, and it means you can make this, as I have, in bleakest February with long-haul imported strawberries, and it tastes of mid-June. Tubs away. So it goes in here and in the deep freeze, and then we are frankly 2 blitzes away from the most deliriously perfect ice cream in the world. I'm going to cook you a special breakfast, but, and you can help if you're good.
Naughty, aren't you?
emergency breakfast supplies. I tend to make pancakes in a weekend anyway, but if I'm away, I like special ones. Ricotta hot cakes, which are wonderful, really light and fresh, just taste of a summer weekend. I always think of them a bit as having the flavour, sort of cheesecake and the texture of a souffled griddle cake. Anyway, a 250 gram tub of ricotta is what you need to start off. And 125 millilitres of milk. I always use semi-skimmed. It's easy to measure just by half filling the ricotta tub. And 2 eggs, which need to be separated, and the eggs beaten separately. But a small child can do this for you, so it's okay. These stir together very easily. Don't need to be too energetic, so it's quite good for early in the morning. And now, 100 grams of plain flour, about a teaspoon of baking powder, and a little child labour ensues. When I'm cooking away from home, I do try and go with the flow, but there are some things I always have to have with me. My Magi whisk. I'm afraid to say I always carry this in my bag because you never know when you might need it. Don't always carry this, but I knew I was going to do a bit of egg white work. Bruno, I want you to whisk this quite strongly, not so much that it goes all over the table, but to make it frothy. Please? Yes. And Mimi, just get the lumps out of this and gently get the flour in. I love strawberries with these. There's something about that juicy redness. But I have to say, I'm not going to put up a fight. I know that the children are going to want syrup, and I do occasionally as well. The thing about the fruit, and it could be any fruit, is that it seems to highlight the freshness of the taste and actually makes you feel like you're eating very healthily.
Mummy,
Yeah?
is this enough?
Let's see. I think that's fine. Do you want a bit more? Here, they're very good. I think that's okay now. I only want them a bit frothy. Can I have this, please? Thanks.
But I don't like strawberries.
Well, you don't have to have the strawberries. You can have the syrup. Thank you. So, just pour these frothy whites into the yolk and flour and all that, the ricotta base. Just fold, or really rather stir, in. And when you're cooking them, if you're using an ordinary frying pan, I would use a bit of vegetable oil, but this is a non-stick griddle, and it's just a question of dolloping out spoonfuls at regular intervals, and after about 2 minutes, they'll be lovely and golden brown. Just flip them over and give them another half minute or so, and that's it. Too much syrup on. Wipe them off. Although I am completely and resolutely citified, I do like to get away sometimes, but I don't find it relaxing just to be slumped on a sofa all weekend. For me, I unwind just by pottering about in the kitchen, and I know it sounds strange, but I do find it really liberating to be in an unfamiliar kitchen. Not that I'm trying to escape my way of cooking or my food, because that's food I like. Just because I'm at the seaside doesn't mean I'm going to be opening a welt stall. But cooking while I'm on a weekend away kind of reminds me of what it's all about. Having friends over, cooking with them and eating with them.
Done.
this is a fabulously easy pudding to make. Passion fruit and white chocolate mousse. I sometimes find white chocolate just a bit too sicky, but the tang of passion fruit really undercuts it. You need 3 ingredients only: the fruit, the chocolate, and eggs. I mean, I've got some raspberries because I love eating the raspberries with it, but you don't have to. Now, I know I kind of foolishly boasted that I travelled light, but not that light, because I want to whisk the whites for the mousse. A little bit of heavier equipment. Now, obviously, you don't really need this to whisk egg whites, but I am a creature of habit. 6 eggs, which need to be beaten separately, and I always find there's something incredibly satisfying about following a recipe that uses a whole packet of eggs. I don't know why. And there are 300 grams of chocolate there, that's 3 bars, 10 passion fruit, pulp, seeds and all, and as you can see, 2 punnets of raspberries. So while the eggs are whisking, I'm going to mix the chocolate, passion fruit and yolks together, and then I can just fold these in when they're stiff. Be really brutal with the first bit of egg white. It just makes everything easier to mix later. In other words, don't fold, just stir in briskly. See, just fish them about. Now, in a few dollops. I love the way the air bubbles up, as if this mousse has got a life of its own. It's marginally easier to fill the glasses if you pour from a jug. So, just get this in here. Okay, and we're ready to roll. I like to put a few raspberries in the bottom of each of those glasses and then pour the mousse on top. And something very strange happens when it sets, which takes about 2 or 3 hours in the fridge. It's as if the passion fruit liquid seeps through the mousse and souses the berries. And then on top you have this light layer of fruity chocolate mousse. I don't want to sound like a complete dipsomaniac, but as anyone with small children knows, there comes a time in the day when you can go no further without a drink. I'm making a white lady, which really knocks the wind back into your sails. It's equal parts lemon juice, Cointreau, and gin, with a bit of sugar syrup just to sweeten it. I mean, you can make this, frankly, I buy it. And then ice. All you do is shake and pour. See you outside. I like the
Very 90s.
My favourite sort of food is the food you just pick at. And the wonderful thing about these rice paper rolls is that really you can eat them at the table as a starter or just outside with drinks. And you do need, though, a couple of things. Some rice paper wraps and some rice vermicelli, both of which I brought with me. And what goes inside is this wonderful tangle of herbs and bits of cucumber, which are, please, in the fridge, if you wouldn't mind, Claire. The other really fabulous thing about these is no cooking is needed whatsoever. A bit of soaking, a bit of chopping, then some rolling. So, these are rice vermicelli, by which I mean it's like pasta made with rice flour rather than wheat flour, really light and wonderful. And a bit of water from a recently boiled kettle, or even less recently boiled, means they will rehydrate, look at that, and just drained and ready for use. I mean, you could eat them like that and they are good. You can see why they're often called cellophane noodles. They feel lovely and soft. Ready? Just need to be drained. Now, a little dousing, just lightly seasoned, bit of soy sauce, my favourite things, fish sauce, love this stuff, and a bit of rice wine vinegar. Can you open this for me? Sorry, I'm being a bit of a girl.
Oof. This is tough.
Oh, thank you. Just intelligence needed. Mint and coriander. I love using Thai basil, but you can't get it everywhere, and coriander is wonderfully aromatic anyway. I want this roughly chopped because I want a bit of crunch, almost as if it's a salad leaf, and because it makes life easier. I think I'm about ready for assembly, and this is the bit where dexterity is required, and I might make you...
I think you better inspect what I've done so far, actually. I'm not quite sure about these spring onions.
They're absolutely fine. Can you take them in?
Shall I mix?
But I'm coming over for a bit of dunking and rolling.
I really like these noodles.
Oh, they are fabulous, aren't they? Now, what else do I need? A plate. Okay.
Okay. So what are you going to do now?
I'm going to do more or less exactly the same as I did to those rice noodles and just rehydrate. Very nice. And I'm going to leave it there for 1 sec while I get a tea towel because I think it's going to be wet work. Nothing wrong in that.
Okay.
Very neat. Okay, this is now perfect. They don't need very long, which is good. And I do them one at a time, otherwise I'm frightened they'll stick together.
Yes.
Now, I tear it off. A little bit in the middle. Okay, over, so it kind of seals it in. And then just roll it like this. I love the way you can see the herbs and pasta through. Yes. And then, well, I normally cut it in 4 because I've made a bit of a mess here. I think I cut it in 3, like that.
Oh. Not the easiest thing to eat. Oh my god.
I know everyone always thinks I'm completely mad for saying that I like cooking on weekends that are meant to be relaxing, but I have to say this is my only way of finding a bit of space for myself. And besides, you can play the martyr slaving over a hot stove when in fact you've got everyone else doing the hard work like bathing the children. It's a very good scam. And added to which, this is incredibly easy to make. It's a Kerala fish curry, and I probably should say straight off that I have never been to Kerala or anywhere near, but the point about Kerala food, or all South Indian food, is that it is somehow fresher tasting, sour, and with coconut milk, different flavours in North Indian food. A couple of onions here, cut into thin half moons, bit of salt to stop them burning. And while they start frying, I'm going to go and get the fish. Use any white fish you want. I've used bream. 1.25 kilos thereabouts, cut into chunks. Want it thick enough to hold its shape while it's cooking. And it does take the barest moment to cook. And now a little bit of an operation. For this I need some turmeric, about a teaspoon here. Beautiful golden powder. And again, a bit of salt. And I wouldn't normally do this, but the trouble with putting your hands in turmeric is that you get stained yellow. It looks like you've got a terrible sort of 50 a day habit. It's really worth doing this because this way the spices go deep into the fish. What I don't want is, nice plain white fish cooked in a curry sauce. I want everything bathed and immersed in loveliness. I mean, this gives a golden colour to everything, but it does have a strange, sort of deep flavour of its own. The thing with all curries is about building up the level of flavours. Of course, now I have to get them off, but... So on top of these onions, a bit more spice. Again, turmeric, the same amount that was on the fish, in other words, teaspoon. Bit of ground cumin. I love the way this turns a deep ochre. Couple of more things for flavour and heat. Red chillies, too, and I like a lot of heat, so I leave the seeds in, but if you're in mellower mood, then just de-seed. And that's the fire, but there's a sort of deeper throated heat that comes from ginger, and this is about 4 centimetres or so peeled and cut into little shards. So if you can be patient enough, just cook, stirring for a while so that the flavours go deep into the onions. So while this is happening, the sauce itself, well, it couldn't be easier. A can of coconut milk and a tablespoonful or so of tamarind paste. I mean, you can buy the fruit dried and then you soak it in water and squeeze bits out. This is the easier option. And an old favourite, some concentrated stock, this time fish stock. Can't go anywhere without my little stocks. Now, I'm going to make this up to the litre mark with some water from the kettle. Stir it together. Just pour it in. And that's it. So once this has come to the boil, I'm just going to immerse the fish, give it a few minutes, and that's supper ready. A little taste. I love the sourness of the tamarind against the sweetness of the coconut. And that's, frankly, all over by the singing, really. I'm going to turn it off and then go and say goodnight to the children. And then when I want to eat, because it could take some time, just need to reheat this, cook the fish in it for about 4 minutes, and supper's ready.
Oh, I certainly am, yes. Oh, that's delicious.
I'm going to give you both of this.
The smell is fantastic.
It is just
What the
gorgeous.
sourness. Okay,
It's lovely.
She upgraded.
And the fish is lovely. It's just firm and light. Just gorgeous.
It's so sour
Yes.
and sweet at the same time.
So I'm going to scoff the lot now, I think.
For us Northern Europeans, starved of sun for so much of the year, red brings warmth and oomph. It revs us up. I just have to taste the bright acid sweetness of raspberries and I'm there in an August heat wave. And I need the hottest red of all, the blaze of chili. It lights up the kitchen and it brings food, whatever the weather, to incendiary life. Chilies are crucial in spare ribs, I think, because although I love all that familiar resonant stickiness, what I don't want is jamminess, so I need fire and heat, and chilies really provide that, and freshness as well, which is important. Chilies, the ginger and spring onions, and the spare ribs themselves. You can get these, in the supermarket these days, but if not, ask a butcher. Okay, so we're ready for the off. Now first, some rice wine vinegar for sourness, because all barbecue has to have a sour element as well as a sweet. About 4 tablespoons, which is 60 mils. That's about it. Slightly less soy, about 3 tablespoonfuls. Yum. Some toasted sesame oil, not a lot, just enough to give that aromatic nuttiness. And now ordinary oil, ground nut or vegetable, about 2 tablespoonfuls. Okay, the same amount of honey, about 2 tablespoonfuls worth. Runny honey, not that thick, solid stuff. Now, staying with sweetness, I want cinnamon. And I like to crumble it in like this, not use ground cinnamon. In the same note, some star anise, a couple. Throw them in. And now ginger, quite a bit of it. Just tumble in these golden spikes. 4 spring onions, just roughly chopped. Now the chilies, 2 lovely fat red juicy ones. Tumble these in. And in these ribs go. I've got 16 here, but I don't know how many people you're going to be cooking for. Really move everything about so that the marinade thinly coats the ribs all over. I'm going to get the roasting tin out now so I can just leave them in here, marinating while I clear up, and then they can just go in the oven. Right, well these have had as much as I'm going to give them the marinade, so I'm just going to tip them into the tin. Really make sure to squeeze every last bit of marinade and all these lovely fresh chunky bits of taste. Smoosh them about so everything is still covered, and the ribs need to be cooked partly covered and then for a while uncovered. So just stick some foil on them now and get them into a hot oven, number 6, 200. Start the process off. About an hour for this bit. I make my ribs a bit fierier than a lot of people would, but then I love hot food. I mean, I think it's compulsive. And in fact, I once did read a paper which explained that there's something in chilies which makes them chemically addictive. And I have to admit, I am a complete heat junkie. The food I like eating most is the food that bites back. I mean, so pitiful, I have to say, is my addiction to chili that just in case I'm out of my home without a source of heat, I carry these little baby bottles of Tabasco in my bag, and then I know I'm going to be okay. I mean, it's that bad. But I have quite an array of chili sauces from around the world, all of which are deeply necessary to me. Pepperoncini. This is very old, you can see. These are little dried red chili peppers. I mean, they've lost their redness, but boy, they have not lost their heat. And they can really give depth to the simplest pasta supper. Just fry some slivered garlic and 1 to 2 crumbled chilies and stir through some hot grain spaghetti. Serve with a sprinkling of fresh parsley. Spaghetti aglio olio. Simple, sensational and life-giving. Sambal erlik. I love this. It's very hot chili from Indonesia. Really, this is just salted, pounded chilies, so you get all the texture and all the heat. It's my secret for instantly transforming a comforting roast chicken into a fire-giving, chili-hot dinner. Just smear the skin with sambal erlik and roast in an oven at maximum temperature. Addictive. Sweet chili dipping sauce from China. Now, sweetness and heat go very well together. Okay, this is a strange combination, but I beg you to try it. Ice cream with red-hot chili syrup, made by boiling a cupful each of water and sugar, then pouring it over a finely chopped chili. Take my word for it, it really works. Feel lit up and soothed at the same time. Well, those ribs should have had about an hour. Just unveil them. Now they look a bit pale, and that's because at this stage I'm going to put on some honey and some 5-spice powder and then turn up the heat so that they get sticky and glazed. About 2 generous tablespoonfuls worth of honey. And about 2 teaspoons of 5-spice powder. And then in this really hot oven, which is about gas 8, 230 centigrade, they will need about 30 minutes more, but you have to watch. Just turn them occasionally so that they get really sticky and sort of thick with glaze. And what I love to do at the end is add a final sprinkle of earthy hot coriander and really deep heat with some more fresh red chilies. Perfect. And you can see these ribs are scorched and glazed. Right. Tongue away. Oh, I love all that sort of conker, shiny, resonant stickiness. Just pile them up on top of one another because they go down very quickly. Now a final red and green sprinkling, the coriander and chilli. And this one is mine now. As a food writer, but really as an eater, I am a shameless solicitor for recipes. I want everyone I meet to tell me what they cook and how they cook it. But I think cooking is where social history and gossip meet. And it's about sharing and passing on of habits and practices. One of my favourite recipes was sent to me by a friend who was travelling around Australia, and she emailed me this thing called Slut Red Raspberries in Chardonnay Jelly. And I knew I wanted to make it because it sounded so terrific. But I thought no recipe could live up to that title. Luckily I was wrong, because I think this surpasses it. These raspberries, about 300 grams, have been steeped in a bottle of Chardonnay. And you can begin to see why these are called slut red raspberries, because the thing about the wine is that as the berries steep in it, they take on almost like a sort of stained glass quality, lucent. And it's not just that, it's also that their sort of very raspberryness is enhanced as well. I mean, this is so fabulous, and their fruitiness goes into the floral wine, and it just tastes, when you eat it, like, I don't know, essence of summer. Okay, just shove that there. And A vanilla pod goes into this. That old-fashioned nursery scent of vanilla just permeates through the liquid. Just split it lengthways. Stick it into the wine, just turn on the heat, let it come to a boil, and then just leave off the heat for 15 minutes so that all those wonderful fruity, floral and spicy flavours just merge into one another. So while this is going on, I'm going to fill up these little glass bowls with the berries. And you could use one large bowl, it's just you get that perfect soft set quality with the jelly better when you have a small container. Now, I'm going to pour some cold water in here for a purpose. And that purpose is that I want to soften my gelatin in the cold water before dissolving it into the hot wine. I don't know if you've come across this before. This is leaf gelatin, which comes in kind of rigid, see-through, hard strips, a bit like sort of plastic cardboard. I'm only using 5 leaves because I want a lovely soft set so that when you dip your spoon into the jelly, you get that really voluptuous, soft, cool wibble-wobble in the spoon. Well, that just needs a few minutes to soften and gellify in the cold water before being dissolved in this lovely warm wine, which needs to be sweetened. About 250 grams of caster sugar, which dissolves better than granulated. And turn the heat back on gently just to help the sugar dissolve. I'm going to remove the pod, but don't throw it away. Never be wasteful. Just let it dry and just stick it in a bag of caster sugar. And you've got vanilla sugar. Right, so the gelatin is ready to be dissolved in the wine. It's easier to dissolve it first in a smaller amount, so I don't take out a third, thereabouts. I use the term loosely. And now squidge and squelch. Look at this. And just drop it into the jug and whisk to dissolve. That's it. Pour back in here so you've got the whole lot. Now, because there is more than a touch of Norman wisdom about me, I'm going to pour this into a jug first, because I think if I start trying to fill up those little bowls from a pan, it'll go all over the tray. And just pour this wonderful scented floral wine over the berries. Just go into the fridge, I don't know, 5 hours or so to set. I always think it's a good idea, though, to take them out a good 40 minutes before you want to eat them, because you want this as soft and melting as possible. I mean, these are lovely just as they are, but what I particularly adore is after you've taken that first soft spoonful, just fill up that dip with some double cream and just let it swirl over. I mean, old-fashioned perfection, jellies and cream. Cooking, as in the rest of life, I believe in playing to my strengths, not my weaknesses, and I am unapologetically an enthusiast, not an expert, which is my way of saying, however awful this sounds, that I leave any job that requires patience, dexterity, or even brisk competence to others. I don't wish to state the obvious, and yes, fishmongers do sell fish, but the point for me is that they will do all the fiddly jobs that I can't do. I mean, I'm not just buying their produce, you know, fabulous though it is, I'm buying their expertise because, you know, in cooking you just have to stack the odds in your favour. So if someone else is going to do all the hard work for you, well, frankly, you're just taking the stress out of the kitchen. Look, I do understand that the idea of making a crab sauce for pasta sounds incredibly involved, not to say fancy, But you're just gonna have to believe me when I say that it's about as simple as making, spaghetti with tomato sauce that you might do every day for the kids for tea. Look, my lovely crab. Now, culinary weapon of choice here. I can lift it down. My pestle and mortar. Well, this takes no time, so I'm gonna get the water on now. It should anyway be boiled from the kettle. Huge pan. Always makes it better with pasta to use as much water as you can. Not least because the temperature won't sink as much when you add the pasta. Right, time for a bit of upper body workout, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Garlic first. I mean, this pasta sauce needs to be very garlicky. Just peel them. Okay, now a bit of salt, about a tablespoonful. I mean, this sort of amount, small handful. And I'm just going to pulverise the garlic to a wonderfully sort of dense, sticky puree. Right, so I've got the wonderful sort of deep heat of the garlic, and now I want the sort of fiery spikiness of some red chilli in the... I don't know whether this is the pestle, this is the mortar. I'm presuming that this is the mortar and this is the pestle. Don't write in. Okay, in they go, and these wonderful sort of clumps of red are going to be pounded to a sort of coral sunset paste. I must say, I do like any form of kitchen activity which sort of demands work that doesn't need any dexterity, and this about sums it up. Now, get the pasta in. I use linguine, which I suppose in a way is like a cross between spaghetti and tagliatelle. Slightly wider, but also wonderfully dense, which makes it a great vehicle to carry the sauce. Now, the main event. This is about 100 grams of brown crab meat and about twice that, so 200 of white. Okay, just fork through, and now some olive oil, about 125 millilitres. I find that easiest to use an American half cup measure. Right, lemon. A lot of zest as well as juice, just because I want this to be really quite definitely lemony. I mean, not astringent, it's all got to work together. Okay, so that's my zest. Right, now just the juice. Beautiful colours. Let's just fork it through, and that is all there is to it. I'm just going to go and check how the pasta's doing. Looks like it's another couple of minutes or so, which gives me time to do my bits and pieces. I want to chop some herbs. I have to say, you don't need to use this crab as a sauce for pasta. It is really wonderful, just heaped on a plate and eaten with a pile of hot, hot brown toast. But then again, having recently released myself from a low carbohydrate diet, I find I can leave no loaf unturned, and any bread is really wonderful with this. I'm just going to have a quick rhapsodic dip. And that looks absolutely perfect. Just need to turn the heat off and drain and dress. This bit you need to be strong for. Not as much sauce maybe as you think for this amount of pasta, but then I want this to be kind of lightly dressed in it rather than drenched. Oh, that's it. Have a quick swirl around. So lovely. Right, watercress and parsley. Scarcely wilt in the heat really. So beautiful when it's flecked with the green too. Right. Can't wait. Perfect. Right, I'm going into the garden for a spot of al fresco cooking this afternoon. Please come with me. Okay, ready to barbie. Now, these fish fillets will take hardly any time to cook. I'm going to put some foil on the barbecue because otherwise I find the fish just sticks to the wires and I don't want to mar the beauteousness of my fillets. Slap them down. And as quick as these are, I mean the shredded salad is even quicker. I mean, one, because of course there's no cooking, and two, because I've already chopped everything up. First, carrot, some spring onions, lovely. Hot red chili pepper, although not as hot as it could be because I've taken the seeds out, so you get the heat but intense sweetness. And some green pawpaw, which looks a bit like cucumber but is much crunchier and nuttier. And now some really lovely pink raw peanuts, lovely and sweet, and really earthy, pungent coriander. So these just need to be roughly chopped. Okay, so just gonna add these and then attempt in my rather alarmingly clumsy way to turn over the fish. Be patient with me. It's just very difficult not to tear this lovely skin. Here goes again. You don't need to use red mullet, beautiful though these are, as you can see. Salmon fillets are fabulous too, a lovely coral. But chicken, anything you want, I mean, please. Okay, now we've got all that lovely crunchy sweetness. So we need a bit of sharpness to offset that. Lime, very sour. Just one, but squeeze out well. Some fish sauce, and it's this sharp note which makes the whole thing so refreshing and, if I may say so, very unfishily inviting. A bit of sugar to melt into the sourness of the fish sauce and lime. You need that, balances everything, in life, in food. Stir. Well, we're done. Now I'm going to fight with my inner clumsy self and outer, I have to say, and get these lovely pink babies off the grill. And just strew with those lovely crunchy shards. Glass of cold beer and this fish. I'm all for keeping things simple in the kitchen. Believe me, I want an easy life. I weep when I read one of those recipes when it takes a whole lunch hour just to get through the list of ingredients, let alone do the shopping. Anyway, you don't need a lot of ingredients if the ones you use really hit you with flavour. I mean, look at these. This is why I go in for a little off-the-shelf exoticism, because I know if I have one of these pre-blended spice mixes at home, I can cook something really special after work any day without any effort whatsoever. A dinner of za'atar chicken with fattoush salad, followed by grilled blistered figs with mascarpone and pistachios, is the easiest way I know of producing that laid-back summer feeling regardless of the season. And it's very low effort. Ordinary chicken portions, which I like quite small, dribbled with olive oil, ordinary olive oil, not extra virgin. The transformational agent is this Middle Eastern spice blend. It's called za'atar. It comprises thyme, sesame seeds and ground sumac, which is itself a blood red berry with a really sharp astringent tang. And it helps counter that mellow woodsiness of the other spices. A thick coating. Make sure the pieces are really well covered with this bosky bark coloured mix, because you want the flavours really to infuse deeply, as well as creating a nubbly crispy burnished skin once they're roasted. So I'm going to leave the chicken to sit in its marinade rub for a while, and then it'll need about 40 minutes in a really hot oven, so that gives me plenty of time to get on with the salad later. All cultures have ways of using up stale bread. And fattoush is a Middle Eastern salad which has wonderful shards of pita bread in it. This one comes via Syria. Snip the pita lengthways so you can open up each bread and then split them so that you have 4 very thin pita ovals. I like a bit of scissor work too, makes me feel efficient. The chicken's really nearly out of the oven now, so it's wonderful and hot. If I can just slide this on the tray beneath the chicken, it'll crisp up in no time, which is about how long it takes to assemble this salad. Juicy cubes of tomato, about 3 or 4 tomatoes, depending on the size. And a whole cucumber cut up into rough triangles. I normally never bother to peel a cucumber, but there's something about that pure jade paleness here that I want. Although this is cool and refreshing, it has to have a bit of fire, even if it's only a mild bit. And for that, I want some spring onions. 3 or 4, depending on how fat they are. Just snip. There's no need to make this fattoush just go with the oven bronze chicken there. I do, just simply because I've got into the habit. It's a kind of no-brainer when I've got people for dinner after work. I know I've got supper together. But if you wanted, this fattoush would be lovely as supper in itself, but in which case I might throw in some chunks of salty feta. Mint, which I am mad for. Great fat bunch of it, which along with the cucumber is so cool and refreshing. I want the mint chunky, rather more like a salad leaf than a bit of chopped herb. It suits me anyway, and this is a very rough and tumble salad, or it is the way I make it. Parsley as well. You need hardly chop the parsley. A few chops and we're in. And a bit of garlic. I just find it easier to mince it straight on top of the salad, but you can easily make up a dressing separately. I think the pita should be about brown by now. There they are. Perfect. I have asbestos hands, but you may prefer to leave the pita before snipping it in. I like to have most of the pita in the salad now to absorb all those herbs and juices, but I like to leave 1 or 2 back just to snip over at the end for contrast and crunch. Let's toss everything together. I love the clatter of the pita against the cucumber and tomatoes. The dressing I add straight into the bowl, and by dressing I mean the juice of a nice fat lemon. I want a lot of sourness here, and that's what helps make it so refreshing. And some olive oil. And, as ever, a good crunchy smattering of salt. The chicken is really well cooked, darkly and thickly spiced. All it needs now is a sprinkling of salt, and only if you feel like it, some parsley, and that couldn't be better. As for the salad, a final splintery topping of pita, and the final late reward, some sumac. Sumac is one of the components in the za'atar, which is on the chicken, and it is intensely, deeply and pleasurably sour. Yeah. My idea of heaven when I'm on holiday is to have breakfast from figs just picked from the tree. But figs here never have that honeyed sweetness. You have to give them a bit of help. Some butter, a splash of orange flower water, going for the Arabian Nights feel here. A little more of that mood with the rose water. Some ground cinnamon, not so much that it overwhelms the figs, but just to enhance their mellow spiciness. And some vanilla sugar. The smell of this is instant good mood for me. And heat this gently. Cut the figs crossways right down, though not quite to the bottom, so that they open like little flowers or little birds with their beaks open and squawking, waiting for worms from their mummy. So when the butter and spices have melted, it's going to slosh them into the gaping figs, blitz them in the oven, and then they will be ready to be dolloped with mascarpone and sprinkled with green pistachios. Perfect ending to an Indian summer supper. I have such a passion for Japanese food, but I am never going to start hand-rolling my own sushi or chiseling radishes. But the thing is, Japanese home cooking is an entirely different affair. Noodles are always an undaunting delight. I just want to lift that bowl to my face and slurp. And I do. I love the Japanese way of eating cold noodles. I am aware that the notion of cold noodles is not exactly an invitation, but in reality there is something about that slippery tangle, mouth-filling, that is just wonderful. Those are soba noodles, which are largely buckwheat, which gives a lovely thick nuttiness to the pasta. I want some sesame seeds toasted while I'm about it. Just means scattering them in this pan and letting their flavour come to the fore as they get golden and slightly scorched. The noodles are cold, and so they have a dressing rather than a sauce, and quite a scant one. First being rice vinegar, lovely sharpness. But everything needs balance in life, and against the sharpness of the vinegar, a bit of honey, the same amount of toasted sesame oil, and a good splash of soy. The noodles are quite sweet actually, so the saltiness of the soy works very well. These just need to be stirred together gently. A few spring onions I need here, a little bunch is all. A bit of a shake to my sesame seeds. And the seeds look just about done now, lightly scorched and toasted. Quick final check here. Perfect. Quick drain, and then they need to be drenched with ice cold water just to stop them cooking so they don't go mushy. Tip the noodles, look at these beautiful pale brown strands, into the dressing you've made. Scatter the spring onions over them and of course the lovely toasted sesame seeds. Just toss everything together. It really is easier to use your hands. Also it feels lovely. In an ideal world you should leave the noodles to stand for about half an hour so that the flavours mellow and mingle, but it isn't absolutely necessary and to be honest not always entirely possible. When I make these for myself, I tend to eat just a huge bowlful of them, as they are. But if I've got some friends coming round, I love to make some seared tuna and gingery broccoli to go with. To make this old favourite of mine, tuna tataki, take a log of ludicrously ruby tuna, paint it with oil and mustard, and roll it in coarsely ground peppercorns to form a smokily hot crust. Sear the tuna in a really hot pan on all sides until only the barest edges are browned and the pepper crust is welded onto the fish. Cut into the finest slices you can and sprinkle with spring onions and twiggy strips of cucumber. To make my gingery broccoli, boil the tender leggy stems for the briefest of moments before plunging them into a bowl of ice water to stop them cooking any further and to keep their vivid green colour. I give this a faintly Japanese flavoured dressing of grated ginger, soy sauce, sesame seeds and a few drops of toasted sesame seed oil. Sometimes I want to go the holy way of the noodle, or steamed veg and seared fish. At other times, only chocolate will do. And in this mood, I have to have my chocolate pavlova. So that's 6 egg whites, which need to be whisked till they're gleaming and satiny. Now this is the stage, and I want to start adding the sugar. Can you see these beautiful white, smooth, satiny peaks? This is why a pavlova is called a pavlova. It was created in honour of Anna Pavlova, the ballerina, after a no doubt fabulous performance in Swan Lake. And this is her bending over with all her tulle. But first, the sugar, because meringue really is just sugar and egg whites. 300 grams of sugar for the 6 egg whites. Just add a spoonful at a time, serenely, slowly, unworriedly. The last bit in one. I am not much of a scientist. In fact, my school report said that I managed rather well considering I had absolutely no flair for the subject. But I do know that if you add vinegar to a meringue base when you're making a pave, it ensures that the inside stays gooey and marshmallowy while the outside crisps up. And this is what we want. And this is where Anna Pavlova's gleaming white swan gets turned into the mucky duck version of the pave. Cocoa, beautiful brown dust, 3 spoonfuls. Sieve it, because otherwise you will get horrible grainy lumps. Wonderful Aztec hillside I'm making here. I made the chocolate pave simply because I am so addicted both to making and eating pavlova. I just thought one day I wanted to do something a bit different. And as Mae West said, too much of a good thing can be wonderful. So I added some chocolate, and it's this bit that makes a difference. So get the best dark chocolate you can, half a bar, about 50 grams, and chop it into wonderful dark splinters. And the point about this is that these little chocolate bits will stay molten like nuggets of melting chocolate in the meringue. Add these to the cocoa dusted meringue and serenely and confidently fold in the cocoa, vinegar and chocolate. Just keep turning the spoon round and down until everything is gently combined. And now I'm ready to mound the meringue onto the tin. I find that if you dollop teeny bits of meringue onto the tin, it keeps the paper from moving about when you're actually building up the pave base. And then mound pleasurably, slowly, as smooth as you go. The trick with the pavlova, along with the vinegar, is that when you put it in the oven, you put it in at a much hotter temperature than you normally would with a meringue, 180, which is gas mark 4. And the minute it goes in, you turn it down to gas mark 2, 150. And this means that the outside sears to a sudden crisp, but the inside cooks slowly and gently, so you have that brown, melting, gooey marshmallow interior. Smooth this down. This will need about an hour and a quarter to cook, and then once it's cool I can slather it with cream and cover it with raspberries. I have a line I always say, and when I say it I believe it, which is that unlike most women I don't have a particular thing about chocolate. But I ask you, is this the cupboard of someone who doesn't have a thing about chocolate? I have an excuse for the dark and white chocolate buttons because I do use them all the time in cooking. Otherwise, I don't know what my excuse is. I do tend to buy things whenever I go on holiday. This is like a really big one, a kilo, like a gold ingot of dark chocolate. I somehow feel better for having this in the house. So other strange thing is that when I write chocolate recipes, I always find myself saying, best quality chocolate. But, when you're just eating straight in the raw, minimum 70% cocoa solids is not what you want. I want something like nutrageous, milk chocolate, peanuts, caramel, Reese's peanut butter. It's good for children too. This is my bribery and corruption drawer. But there's something rather more important. Those days when you can't be bothered to cook a pudding, or frankly can't be bothered to cook anything. My dinner of choice, frozen mini chocolates. Well, the meringue base has been out of the oven and should be cool and is beautiful. Don't be alarmed when you see these cratery splinters. It's meant to be like that, not least because you can now see all these lovely gooey bits of dark chewy chocolate underneath the crust. And anyway, this is not conveyor belt cookery, it's home food. It's meant to look like this. On top of the dusty cocoa layer, a fat, gleaming wodge of double cream. I wouldn't worry about doing this too neatly, just sort of splosh it on. Then all it needs on top is a sort of tumbling layer of raspberries, all crimson matness. Fabulous. And here they come. And finally, a bit of dark chocolate, just roughly shaved over. I have a weakness for all pavs, but especially this darkly glowing beauty. This is very easy to make and very easy to eat. There is one difficult piece in between, and that's actually cutting it. But greed finds a way. Perfect. I don't read travel books much. Not that I entirely lack interest in the cultural content of any particular country, but I do just find myself skipping straight to the food section. Frankly though, I prefer to get myself in the mood for a holiday by wallowing in cookery books. Though what happens mostly is that I read the food books instead of going on holiday. But that's the way I like it. I really believe that so often to travel culinarily is better than to arrive. Call me Scheherazade, but just the idea of this saffron-scented chicken pilaf makes me feel that I should be in turquoise gauze and jewelled slippers. There are a couple of chicken breasts here, which I've cut into chunks and marinated in yoghurt, lemon juice and ground cinnamon, and this gives it the most wonderful perfumed tenderness. I use basmati rice in this pilaf because I like anyway. It's wonderful fragrance, but here it's lit up with saffron and studded with nuts and these bits of chicken toasted until bronze. But it is saffron scented, so the keynote is saffron. These lovely burnt brick red strands. I'm going to add the saffron straight to the stock because this way you get all the goldenness and flavour permeating through the pilaf later. Taste is very hard to convey in words. For me, the best description of taste ever is in a Huxley novel, Time Must Have a Stop, when a young man drinks champagne for the first time and describes it as apple peeled with a steel knife. And sort of borrowing from that a bit, I think that saffron really has a sort of rusty egginess. It's got astringency, but it's got richness as well. I'm just going to leave that and get on with the rice itself. I want to put butter and oil, but mostly butter, just a tablespoonful really, to stir in the rice first, just let it melt. Because the point again is always balance, and you have lightness but also sumptuousness, and some oil. This doesn't make it sort of heavy, it just adds slight richness, and I want this. There's something about a pilaf anyway, which is a feast. And I've got a litre of stock, so I need half that amount, so 500 grams of rice, basmati. The wonderful thing about basmati rice is it takes really 10-15 minutes to cook. Always my rice of choice. And just toss into the butter. Stir through just till it gets coated lightly and is glossy. So in with this wonderful golden liquid. Now on top of this, I want some lemon zest. Really finely grated so it almost dissolves into the rice. The juice of a whole lemon. It sounds like a lot, but it doesn't give sort of invasive sourness. It just balances that light floral fragrance of the rice and the richness of the nuts. This should be coming up to the boil. Oh, it's streamlined. And a few cardamom pods. Just 3 or 4 because they're quite strong. And I don't want anything to overwhelm, but I want that smoky muskiness that cardamom brings. Sort of instant exoticism. Just transferring it to a lower flame, lid on, and in 10 to 15 minutes the rice will be cooked, by which I mean it'll be tender but with a bit of bite and will have absorbed all that golden liquid. Now this pilaf doesn't just have chicken, it has wonderful mixture of toasted nuts. You can use whichever nuts you want. I've got cashews and pine nuts here because I love their fat waxiness. And some flaked almonds, and I'm sure that bought packets of flaked almonds are considered really disreputable and not the thing, but I love them here. While these nuts are toasting, I'm gonna just get the chicken out of its yogurt and cinnamon marinade. These nuts are just how I want them, burnt and bronzed, so I can dispense with them. Now I need to give the chicken the same treatment, but for the chicken, need a bit of oil. Gonna check the rice. Perfect. It's absorbed all the liquid and it's just striped with strands of gold. Just chop a bit of parsley while the chicken's bronzing up. Right, we're just talking about an assembly job now, which I always like. Just wait till you see this. Every time I cook rice, when I cook it a lot, I am freshly amazed at how much it swells up. I mean, look at this mound. Always, as ever, you just use a fork for stirring rice so that the grains don't clump together. Just tumble over these nuggets. Most of the bronze nuts can go in now, I think. Still wonderful and warm. Beautiful. Just toss everything gently so it's mixed. Final few bits of these nuts, and then green hit of parsley and some slithered pistachios, not toasted in the pan because I want all that ludicrous greenness. And this is when this comes to life for me. A little touch of the Arabian Nights and sunny shepherd's bush. And how can that be a bad thing? I'm going to have to help myself now. I'm sorry, but I don't even know why I'm apologising. For me, a semifreddo is the platonic ideal of an ice cream. Its name just means semi-cold, which is that it's like ice cream without that hard bite, with the most fabulous texture, just satiny, smooth, densely melting and voluptuous. And this honey semifreddo, I tell you, makes me glory in every bee's existence. Before you start the semifreddo, you need to whisk 300 millilitres of double cream. But I have to say, they do sell it in cartons of 284, so I wouldn't worry about the missing 16 millilitres. It's a honey semifreddo, so I get my honey in. 100 mils, good runny honey. Look, beautiful. 1 egg. And 4 yolks. And I use these beautiful orange yolked Italian eggs, which means that the semifreddo will have sort of a deeper intensity. But don't worry if you use ordinary eggs and it's paler. It'll still taste lovely. And last one. Now this is a very straightforward contraption, a pan with a bit of water at the bottom and this bowl suspended over it so that I'm going to heat the honey and eggs without actually letting the water touch them, so they were not going to split or anything. I just want it to warm, not get so hot that we have scrambled eggs. I mean, of course, you could use one of those handheld electric mixers, but I want nothing to rupture my sewing mood. I happen to love a semifreddo more, I think, than ordinary ice cream. I love that melting texture rather than that teeth-aching sharpness. But one of the fabulous things about it is that it's much easier to make than ice cream. Just 3 ingredients and some whisking. Unlike ice cream, you're not making a custard first and you're not churning it once it's freezing or taking it out of the deep freeze and mixing it up. Now this is just how I want it. Beautifully yellow and mousily aerated and voluptuously swelling. So it's just a question of taking it off the heat and folding it into the cream mixture, and that's really, really all there is to this. Beautiful. And fold in. Don't worry about this, just keep calm and gentle. There. Now this is frozen in a loaf tin, not like an ice cream, but more like, I suppose, like a terrine, and already lined with cling film. And there it is in all its beautiful, pale, honeyed creaminess. Right, this just needs to be covered with a bit more cling film and then put in the deep freeze for about 3 hours till it's ready to serve. But if it makes your life easier, you can leave it in the freezer for up to 2 days. And I love to eat this unmoulded, then sliced and drizzled with some more fabulous amber honey. And just to complete that resiny taste, sprinkle with some toasted pine nuts. As far as I'm concerned, where there's bread, there's life. I mean, look at all this. I turn my nose up at nothing, but I have a particular addiction for these Middle Eastern flatbreads. And what I love about them is that they're undoughily chewy, but turn moorishly crisp when you toast or grill them. And they make wonderful kind of edible envelopes for my Moroccan roast lamb or form a near instant base for a kind of Eastern Mediterranean take on pizza. I mean, not that I want to be dizzyingly eclectic in the kitchen, but I think it is impossible to cook, if you like eating, without borrowing a bit from here, a bit from there. And these flatbread pizzas are a vaguely Eastern Mediterranean take on, you've guessed it, an Italian idea. And the base is a bought flatbread. I mean, these are styled Mediterranean wraps, but obviously I'm not going to use them as wraps. And this is a tomato, mint and halloumi pizza. I'm just going to get the seeds out of the tomato because I don't want it too wet and pulpy on that thin base. Oh, these are lovely and fresh. Just chop fairly finely. And just smooth these now pulpy tomatoes over the flatbread, and on top of the tomatoes, something I love so much, some halloumi, which is intensely salty Cypriot hard sheep's cheese. Again, chop this very finely, or you can crumble it with your fingers. This won't melt and go into that sort of stringy goo that mozzarella does, but it does sort of meld into the tomatoes and soften. And the saltiness of the cheese against the sweetness of the tomatoes is wonderful. So just sprinkle the halloumi on top. Bit of dried mint. Now, an Egyptian friend of mine introduced me to the joys of dried mint. Just has a depth and sweetness that is lovely, and when this is cooked, I want just to blanket it with some freshly chopped mint, and it's as if the freshness of that mint really complements this dried muskiness underneath. Aha, bit of olio, not too much. Just drop it on the barbecue. It won't take very long. You just want that thin base to crispen a little bit more and the cheese just soften a little in the heat. As you can imagine, these flatbread pizzas lend themselves to pretty well any kind of elaboration or topping you want. And this is a chili and coriander pizza with some ground coriander, lovely, sort of intensely, deeply grassy. And pour in a bit of oil, and just as the mint, halloumi and tomato pizza is sort of partnered by some fresh mint at the end, so this has to have a really lovely leafy covering of fresh coriander once it comes off the barbecue. It works so well pairing the sort of scorched, nutty spiciness of the ground dried herb with the final smattering of the fresh. These aren't thick, wodgy pizzas. I mean, there's something a bit poppadom-like almost about their base. Okay, so on with this. And finally, something I really love, such an easy thing to do, a za'atar flatbread. Now, za'atar is a bought Middle Eastern spice blend. It's a mixture of wild thyme, sesame seeds and ground sumac. All I'm going to do, so you can see how easy it is mix that with a bit of oil, a bit of brushwork I'm in the mood for. Let's brush this on. And this can join the other two on the barbecue now. There you go. And it's really just a question of cooking until that thin base is even crisper and everything is beginning to ooze in and melt slightly. And the best eaten, I think, just cut into spindly wedges with, I don't know, a drink before dinner or lunch. I'm going to put this on just for a minute just to speed up the process because I'm too impatient, and start chopping my herbs to go over the pizzas when they come off the barbecue.
Thanks.
I mean, I have to say, I call this Moroccan roast lamb, but I don't think this is how Moroccans cook lamb, but it's how I cook it when I want to bring Morocco to me. It is just a leg of lamb here, which is transformed so far from your idea of a normal Sunday roast by my magic ingredient, the most wonderful Moroccan spice blend, Ras El Hanout, containing just about every exotic spice you can imagine, and flecked with rose petals. Oh, so beautiful. I have to read this to see exactly what's in it, because there's so much. Galangal, the rosebuds, ginger, cardamom, cayenne, allspice, lavender, cinnamon, and about twice as many as that, including absolutely some Nigella seeds. And I need to mix some lemon juice, some minced garlic, olive oil, and some freshly chopped coriander, just for another hit of pungency. And then what I'm going to do, and I love this bit, is stab the lamb with the end of a sharp knife and push the spice mixture into the holes, smear it over the top, chuck it in a plastic bag and leave it to marinate for an hour or so. I've taken the lamb out of its bag and look, you can see it's still beautifully covered with its marinade. I've preheated the oven to gas mark 6, that's 200 degrees centigrade, and I'm going to give it an hour and a half, by which time it'll be aromatically blackened on the outside, and I do mean charred, but still juicily pink and tender within. I'm travelling eastwards from Morocco for the accompaniment to go with the lamb. This is from Turkey, it's called cacik, and it's really just a variant of the salads they have all along the Eastern Mediterranean of mint, yoghurt, cucumber and garlic. The lamb is about to come out of the oven, so it's a perfect time to make the cacik. I did peel and chop this cucumber, and this couldn't be simpler. It's just a question of mixing all the ingredients together. So after the cucumber, some wonderful Greek yogurt. And what I love about this is the contrast between the smooth coolness of the yogurt and the heady scented-ness of the spiced lamb. Oh, and I love it as well, stuffed into warmed pita breads for a sort of different kind of cucumber sandwich. A garlic clove is what I need. There's more if you want this really hot. Just grate it in, mince it in. Some dried mint, just a sprinkling. And some lovely crunchy salt. And of course, some freshly chopped mint from the garden. Stir it together. What I want to do now is drizzle with a lovely green ribbon of olive oil. Beautiful. And a final sprinkling of mint. Perfect.
Yes, of course, there will be ones that you don't know.